Hey, I was thinking to share some of my experience with the frozen fear inquiries because I've been doing it for a while now. And also maybe I will do some self-facilitation on that. Let's see how it goes. So when it comes to connections, I seem to face problems, So usually when I do inquiry, I just go back to family, mom and dad, family. And I'm just a little Serena, And I just try to be the child, with all its. I didn't know anything about anything when I was a child. This is why I go back to that experience and that feeling, just being there as a child, and it didn't make sense. The experience or of what was happening, it didn't make sense in a way. And I had no thoughts about that. I had I didn't had any thought about the experience that I was going through. So this is why I go back during inquiry. This is why I go back to that state of mind and consciousness. And it's easier to be with the emotions also, or whatever is coming up during inquiry, because I had no thinking about that. I didn't know if the experience was good or if it was bad. I had no category in my mind, like this experience is good and this experience is bad. I was just into the experience. I was just into the connection, into the relationship with mom, dad, brother, etc. But mainly it was them. And so what I'm facing these days is the fear of connection and the pain of disconnection, actually. So if I go there when I inquire, or like now, if I just go there, and this is why the connection and the frozen fear inquiries came up for me to share it, because that's a big one for me, And the reason why I'm sharing about that is just because I feel connected with you, and I also saw that Mihai was sharing some of his experiences, and I felt like inspired, to maybe also share the human particles of that, the human experience of that repression barrier. Because in inquiry, I call it repression barrier. When I go back, I don't call it anyhow. I just feel the emotions, the pain of disconnection and sadness and aloneness that comes with it, If I want to bring it into inquiry mode, I say like, I'm not disconnected at all. I'm fully connected with them. I can feel the disconnection in my body. I can feel mainly in my stomach that it's going into my body, and the kind of tension or pain, if I want to call it anyhow. I feel the disconnection and the tension of that and the pain of that. And if then I say, I want to connect with them, I know how to connect with them and it's safe. I'm not afraid to connect with them. Then I can just feel this strong fear in and behind the tension. And I just feel, and I just go with it, I don't want to go really into the inquiry part, like saying how I do this or whatever, but I'm just running the fear. I just, I'm just kind of just bravely let myself going into that fear, that I'm afraid, I'm scared, I'm afraid, I'm scared. No matter what comes up, because a lot of words and understanding and things come up if I go with that. the reasons why I'm scared, I mean. But I'm just going with the feeling, because it was just fear back then. There was no understanding of that. It was just the fear. It was just the fear, you know, and all the understanding comes after. And that's good, but I just let it flow, but I just stay with the fear. I'm afraid, I'm afraid. I'm afraid. That's just to say it out loud so you also see the programs. I'm afraid that something is going to happen, something bad. I'm afraid. I'm afraid they are going to attack me. They are going to humiliate me. I'm afraid that I will be stuck in this forever, in this disconnection, that I can't connect. And this pain will be there forever. Or the sadness and the hurt that I can't connect. I'm afraid that I will never reach them, that we will never connect. And I just use all of it. Like I'm not afraid that if it's going to happen in that way, that we are never going to be connected again, if we're never going to connect, and if it's never going to be safe through this connection. And then, of course, it's just fear. So I just go with it. I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid. I was in that fear, so that's the fear. And different things come up. The shame starts to come up from deeper, the shame. I don't want to go deep now into this. I'm just showing you how simply it works. You know, it's very simple, very, very simple. You know, there is no complication in that inquiry or that experience. The shame starts to come up. The deeper I go with the fear, shame of being a girl. I don't even know what's there. There's no sexuality yet, but something is there. I don't even know what is that. It's just being a girl or something. But even saying the word is too much. You know, I'm just feeling ashamed that I'm a girl and no one accepts me. I feel incomplete because no one accepts me, and I'm just looking around. I just want someone to complete me in a way, like accept me in that. But they are rejecting and shaming. So I just feel the shame. I just want to make it more conscious, more visceral, or metabolize it in the body a little bit. So, you know, I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed of being a little girl. I run it in the mind a little bit. Mind, body mirroring. I'm ashamed of being a little girl. I'm ashamed of being a little girl. I'm ashamed. And then it just goes into the body. It goes back into the body through the mind body mirroring. It just goes back into my tummy and my face. I'm ashamed. And through that again, like I'm sad and alone. Sad and alone. No one will see me ever, never, you know, never ever. This shame just separates me. And then I feel like alone and sad. And then again, just I'm not afraid to feel sad and alone forever if it won't change. I'm afraid. It's just going, I'm afraid, I'm afraid. I'm not afraid to show this girliness or femininity or something. I'm not afraid to show this to them fully. What's the worst thing that can happen if I show this to them fully? Abuse, judgment, shaming. I'm not afraid of that. I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid. I'm just running this. Yeah, and I could go with that even more. I usually go more with that, and different traumas come up and stuff. So that's the repression barrier for me. That's the repression barrier. The disconnection. The disconnection is my repression barrier. And in the first 5-6 years of my life, there was no anger. There was no anger. It came after. Anger is my primary repression. And it came after. Fear was first. And before the frozen fear inquiries, I could remember that it was always, even before any emotion or before the angry expression, I could remember that it was always the fear that kicked into my system, like 1 second, nanosecond, like it was the fear that kicked into my feeling, into my system and body before any emotion or then the anger, It started with fear somehow, like a thunder, it was the fear. But also doing inquiry on my primary anger repression for a couple of weeks and then using the frozen fear inquiries for 2-3 weeks now, I could also see that, during the first 5, 6, or 8 years of my life, I don't remember exactly, the anger wasn't there. The anger response wasn't even there, or it was that repressed, that I was just so young, and because of the things that happened in my childhood, in the early years especially, there was just desperation in the experience that I can't connect, and that violent or attacking energy just came towards me, and the hatred energy that came towards me through the people who I loved the most. And I was so dependent on them, and it just didn't make sense. I don't know how to explain. I'm just so much in the child's mind when I'm talking about that, to explain that I couldn't comprehend what was happening, hard to explain. It was just basically shut down. That came from the fear, from the initial fear, and it was just shut down. And shock. And I was only in that, I don't understand. I don't know. I don't understand. I don't know. That this was the first years, It's just the shock of not being able to love, give and receive love. So in other words, connect. And the shock of that, the hatred and the abuse was coming through the people who I loved the most. And I was dependent on them and I needed care and there was just love with them. And so the abuse was coming through them. And it just caused a shock, like a frozenness in my body mind as a little child. And so that's why it's important for me to do the frozen fear inquiries in that state of mind, just being a little child, because then it can go deep in the unconscious. So the adult mind is not keeping me distant from that experience, from that pure experience, you know? And also what else? Something else I wanted to say. And yeah, because that's just my story with the fear, but also that it's always the fear that kicks in, you know, it's very subtle and you have to do it for a while to see this, that it always starts with fear. So I'm just sharing it to encourage to inquire in that way if you really want to go deep with this, to the root of the repression, I mean, this mechanism of repressing that starts with the fear. And anger came after those years when I just got exhausted with this whole thing that I can't connect and the violence and the unexpected things. Then the anger and the burst out came and the raging. I was expressing that a lot. That's a shit. That's not normal. That's fucked up, you know? And then, you know, just the realization that it's not going to change, no matter how much I'm hurt, no matter how much I rage and express this, they are just not going to change. So like a giving up and the desperation and the giving up, like, okay, so I have to stay with them. And then the conditioning of normalizing it kicked in, it came into the system just to normalize it, you know, and trying to make it okay. And then the hatred and the anger repression came into my personality strongly, that I have to be there. But actually, I fucking hate you. I don't want to be with you because you do this to me. So that type of anger, the primary anger repression, came into my system and became a part of my personality, because I have to be somewhere where I don't want to be. I don't want to be with you. Fucking hate you. Go away from me. The command, like, go away, you know, and the hatred and the anger, just not being able to change this. And I just have to be with them. So it came after the fear. I'm just sharing the story to make sense of it, so you see it more also, and just to connect in that way. Yeah, it's something special for me, working with the disconnection and the fear of connection and connecting with you. I hope it gives you something and helps you also with your inquiry. Because these frozen fear inquiries are very special for me, because they really bring me to the root of the repression, and they help to open this human part. And because I was so disconnected, I'm sure you can relate to all of this, and because I was so disconnected, and because I'm still disconnected to some degree, that's why it's very important for me to feel connected and be connected in life, in my relationships, during inquiry, to be with someone who understands and can be there with me through the human part also, through the human understanding, through the human seeing, you know, like understanding what I'm going through, something like this. This is why I also like to give it to people, you know, and I know that many of you, this is why you came to me for sessions, because I'll give you this I can see where you are. I'm there with you. I'm feeling also what you're going through, and I know that counts. That it counts a lot, and it means a lot if it's there in the field. The human part. So it's not just inquiry, but it's meeting through our human experience. We connect through that too. So it goes deeper, or it gives a sense of safety. So we can like bring it up, the trauma and the unsafety, wherever you felt unsafe in the experience during the trauma, because it's traumatic. Yeah, I think that's what I wanted to share, to encourage through my experience and through my own inquiry with you. This fear is so innocent. And if you go with that, probably traumas will come up, and, just spend some time with it if you need time to process it or something. But this fear is so primal, and so innocent that it will bring it up. And that's good, because then it's a sign of healing. Yeah, that's all. And let me know how it goes with your fear inquiry and whatever.